Unidentified shadowy figures are recorded inside the Cartoon Network complex. The outline of their cranial structures does not seem to be human in shape.
So I'm gonna let everyone in on a little secret. You know how for years you'll have people on the internet claim, oh my god, television used to be so much better when I was a kid in particular. And how out of most of these networks to face the wrath, Cartoon Network has definitely been one of the top channels to face this scrutiny. Well, there's a reason for that, and it's beyond nostalgia or newer cartoons not looking as appealing as the ones we had growing up, or whatever the case may be. Cartoon Network becoming heavily criticized on the internet for no longer being the underdog, no longer being the greatest place for cartoons. But this factor that really changed the way people looked at Cartoon Network was absolutely 100% its branding, and how over the years it would be watered down more and more until it became something simplistic. While promotional material featuring cartoon characters interacting with one another was nothing new, there's no denying that Cartoon Network always went the extra mile. This was felt with Cartoon Fridays, and later on just Fridays, but more so than ever, this was felt with the advent of CN City. I know we like to throw around the word iconic nowadays on the internet, but truly, CN City was iconic. Utilizing so many techniques to have the characters of Cartoon Network all live under the same roof, or, well, city. And it wasn't even just the bumpers, the website was in on it too. I remember logging on to CartoonNetwork.com, and if it was in the day, the images of CN City on the website would be that of daytime. When it was evening, around 5 to 8 p.m., it would be a sunset. And if you went on any time past that, it would be nighttime. This little touch did so much for immersing the average viewer of Cartoon Network because it really played into the idea that this was a real city, that these characters really are alive. But unfortunately, the branding was undone by the root of all evil: money. It was expensive keeping Animal Logic around and having them crank out all these bumpers. And I'm sure bringing in all these voice actors from different shows, having them record lines just for the bumpers. So I understand the position Cartoon Network was in, why they would have to downgrade. I don't think anyone is denying that. This was Cartoon Network branding at its fullest. But of course it's going to leave a bad taste in people's mouths when, in the following year, the only shows they're really promoting are Chowder and Flapjack. The previous running animated series are pretty much over, and CN City was no longer going. Now we had the nudes! Which, I get the gimmick, but come on. A lot of these were the same poses, the characters, they still technically interacted, but it didn't feel like them. They weren't voiced by any stretch of the imagination. We had like the same 2 or 3 tracks. Yeah, they still went in for the holiday season, but the magic was gone. And as a viewer, if you see not only all of these beloved shows gone, but the packaging you know and love gone, and with CN Real on the horizon, of course you're going to lose faith in Cartoon Network. Of course you're going to think it's not as good as it was. That transitional period from CN City into CN Real, and then after CN Real into the Adventure Time regular show era, it was fucking rough. And for a lot of people, I'm sure they would have appreciated closure on CN City. I don't know how you pull that off. I don't know how you can just close out an era of Cartoon Network and branding, but it probably would have meant a lot to the viewers. Luckily, Cartoon Network gave us just that, kinda. A multi-show crossover on a scale never before seen. One that, in hindsight, did close out these era of cartoons, even if they didn't really wrap up with these episodes. Cartoon Network's last hurrah in this total immersion where we're following in the characters in a world that feels alive. This event was known as Cartoon Network Invaded, and over the next few days, you will get to experience Cartoon Network Invaded through a different lens, as I was able to team up with some awesome creators from the Black cartoon community and revisit something that I hold near and dear to my childhood heart. Seriously, I think this was the most exciting time to consume Cartoon Network for me. So without further ado, this video will cover the immersion, all the promos and bumpers and other marketing tactics that gave Cartoon Network Invaded its edge, something that the other competing networks were never able to live up to.
Don't go too far, because my gym partner's a monkey will be right back on Cartoon Network Invaded.
So the actual story behind Invaded is pretty wild. Doesn't have much to do with this topic, this component of this Mega Invaded review, but I think it's worth mentioning. For the longest time, I was under the impression that this special was done in celebration of the moon landing's 50th anniversary. But apparently, according to Maxwell Adams, creator of the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, Invaded was originally going to be a Kraft sponsorship that fell through at the last minute, which is why every episode of the event features Cheese in some way, shape, or form. Not Cheese the Foster's character, he's just contained to the actual Foster's episode and then the original Invaded ending, which we'll touch on, but actual cheese that you eat. It is an important plot point. Now, Cartoon Network Invaded was properly announced inside the network's 2007 upfront, but you see, on air, there is genuine buildup and anticipation. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. This was 2007, over 13 years ago. And unfortunately, not every piece of Invaded content has been preserved on the internet. So although I've been rattling my brain, I, for the life of me, cannot tell you the initial, very first teaser for this event. But I will say, in either March or April of 2007, again, it was a slow burn, they really built up to this, Cartoon Network began airing very cryptic promos insinuating that aliens were messing with their shit, giving the viewer this uneasy feeling. You're watching your cartoons, but what exactly is going to happen to those cartoons? What is happening to the network? Now, because Cartoon Network has always maintained a level of self-awareness, just like the shows, the network itself knew to not take itself too seriously. So, after being cryptic for a little bit, the network decided to give us just a little taste of our guest.
Although the threat of an alien invasion is real, it appears to be not quite so menacing as originally thought. Take a look at the latest surveillance footage.
Let's get back out there and do some righteous invading. What's the problem?
Door jam.
Again? Let me try.
I can do it.
Move over, Major Muscle.
I can do it.
We really should commend the network's ability to crack jokes while still creeping the audience the fuck out. And with this promo, I also gotta give my shouts to the narrator of this entire event. His narration is consistent within all the promos, all the recaps, you name it. This was the voice of Cartoon Network Invaded. And having this man announce and narrate everything as if he was a radio host from back in the day was genius. It wasn't even something I necessarily understood or appreciated as a kid, but it did its job in conveying that this was something different. And by blacking out the aliens, it created this intrigue. What do they look like? Where did they come from? What is their mission? And why is 9-year-old Kevin terrified? Because the way they're animated, reducing these designs to a silhouette is very unsettling. No exaggeration, I'm pretty sure I had a nightmare over it. And as we got closer to this invasion, Cartoon Network gave us a pretty up close and personal look at the invaders. Finally, after all this build-up and mystery, we get to see exactly who they are. Can't be as horrifying as whatever's conjured up in my head.
Starting May.
Ah!
Jesus Christ, what the fuck? Why is it green? What the fuck? Is that sweet?
For reference, it's not like we really had a trailer track or anything to figure out when these promos would drop. So although I was just dying to know the scoop, my moment of satisfaction was more so a moment of surprise. I was completely thrown off guard on the commercial break. But with this promo, we got a proper idea of who was involved in Invaded, and let me tell you, getting the rundown was one of the most stressful moments of my life. At that point in time, I loved Ed, Edd and Eddy, so of course I wanted them there. But I also wanted to figure out which shows were going to make the cut. Who was worth being exploited for viewership?
Starting with Foster's Home
Uh-huh.
Imaginary Friends.
Yes!
Then Eddie, but Jim
Uh-huh.
Carter's a monkey. Get
Eh.
after that. Then the Grim
Yo! Now you would imagine the network using their inconsequential, anything goes episodic animated series for this event is just a no-brainer, and it really should have come as a surprise, but to me it did. In hindsight, yeah, these obviously were some of the biggest shows on Cartoon Network at the time, but when you're a kid, it made the concept of an invasion feel a lot more grounded. Because at this point, the schedule still had a pretty decent amount of variety, and I was still coming to terms with the concept of cancellation and syndication and reruns and all that. I really didn't know what to expect. Now, if memory serves, at least one of these aliens were voiced by Jason DeMarco. He's currently over at Adult Swim. He's the guy who runs Toonami, and honestly, it's just an unspoken hero of the entertainment industry. Regardless of what anyone says, we would not be where we are with anime being so prominent in the United States without Jason DeMarco. I feel as if a lot of music and voices would have gone unheard. The dude's a visionary, could not give him enough credit.
Don't go anywhere. Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends will be right back on Cartoon Network Invaded.
So as the start of Invaded approaches, and in my tiny brain, all of these shows are about to cross over and change forever, Cartoon Network decided to up the ante and ensure that no one could escape Invaded. Of course, I was on the internet just as much as a kid as I am now. And boy, was I glued to CartoonNetwork.com, Nick.com, DisneyChannel.com, you name it. Imagine my surprise when I start up Cartoon Network the week of May 4th, 2007, and I'm greeted with this. A splash screen that features chilling, yet aesthetically pleasing silhouetted art of Mac and Blue holding each other as the illuminating font lingers above their heads. Unexplainable. Do mysterious beings lurk in our very homes? Referencing the plot of Cheese A Go-Go, where Blue is led to believe that Cheese is an alien. And yeah, this carried on week from week. If you went on CartoonNetwork.com before it took you to the actual site, you would be dealt with one of these bad boys. Mysterious. What strange creatures are taking over the cul-de-sac? Shocking. Watch as Adam comes face to face with something that's not human. Frightening. Panic erupts when bodies are snatched. Is anybody safe? Horrifying. Witness the unspeakable. Billy and Mandy encounter the space invaders. And I love how these are almost identical to old school horror movie posters. They also had flash games every week, which apparently no one wanted to archive. Okay. This, coupled with the packaging of the general network, really drove the point home that this channel, for all intents and purposes, was really invaded. Even the Friday night block got affected. There's this weird in-between block of Cartoon Network Fridays and Friday Dynamite, just called Friday Night Premiere Thunder. It had a giant monster truck type vibe. It was... they tried, okay? But during Invaded, it transformed into Friday Night Premiere Laser. They weren't just gonna have the block share a night with Invaded. No. Invaded would infect that block. But what about the actual packaging for the event itself? Well, during Invaded, the show's feature did not have their typical theme songs, but instead, a special opening sequence that features a UFO flying above a Cartoon Network city, and more or less broadcasting the credits as it flickers through clips from throughout the episode. And that theme? It slaps! I also really dug how they call these chapters. Not only did they put in the work to immerse their audience for the first time since CN City, but they really trusted the audience, which only added more to the immersion. They even referred to it as a miniseries. Tell me, what self-proclaimed miniseries did Nickelodeon and Disney Channel have? I'm sure someone's gonna bust one out and make me look like a fucking idiot, but I'm pretty sure Cartoon Network were the first ones to look at their young audience and say, yeah, you guys know what we're getting at. Let's not dance around anything. Now, the most impressive part to me wasn't the Invaded will be right back or next time on Invaded, but the fact that the packaging transcended the premiere. Typically, during events, even long-going events, networks will only air it for its premiere and maybe an encore. But Invaded kept its packaging the entire time. When any of these episodes were reran during May, they had the Invaded packaging. I'll never forget, 4th grade. Had to transfer schools because I was dealing with some, racism. And the school I got transferred to actually had cable. So one day in after school latchkey, we decided to put on Cartoon Network, and guess what comes on? One of the episodes from Cartoon Network Invaded. And to my surprise, it aired with the complete packaging. The Be Right Back, the Now Continues, it was all there, alongside other generic bumpers that the network created for this event. Again, it kept this momentum and illusion going that the network was really in danger. These characters were really in trouble. And the atmosphere for Invaded really made up for the actual contents of the episode, considering they never really actually crossed over, except for the original ending. that I missed the first time around. And then had to catch a rerun, and the original ending never aired. I didn't see it again until years and years later online, let me tell ya. It felt as if these shows weren't going to go back to normal until after the invasion was over. Now, it's not like they actually went that far. Every Foster's rerun, or Ed and Eddie rerun, or Gym Partner rerun having the Invaded intro attached, but still having those particular episodes rerun with that particular packaging, to this day, that still blows my mind. Networks don't really have to go in with their branding anymore. Especially Cartoon Network, who, no shade intended, more or less ensured that the packaging and bumpers on their channel aligns with their app, leading to a whole lot less of, well, everything, but especially atmosphere. Things do feel like they're by the numbers, and I'm sure that does impact the way people engage with the actual content. No matter how you remember Cartoon Network Invaded, it cannot be denied that it was really the last big event this network put on. I always wanted another Invaded. I wanted to see some more serious shows involved, like fucking Ben 10, although the invasion would be over by the end of the 22 minutes. And I get it, a lot of the people involved didn't even really want to do it. Creatives hate being told what to do. Man, oh man, I just want more. And maybe after this video, you do too. Please check out everyone else's entries in this mega review. Everyone worked really hard on this, and I can't wait for you guys to see everything. And don't worry, this isn't one of those collabs with a story or anything cringe like that. Wait, what is that? Oh my god!